Inside ADX Florence, America's most extreme Supermax prison. The silence of steel. Imagine being locked inside a cell the size of a bathroom. 23 hours a day. No sunlight. No sound. Just concrete, steel, and the echo of your own breath. Now imagine that the men around you aren't just regular criminals. They're terrorists, cartel bosses, and killers who once shook entire nations. Yet here, at ADX Florence, even the most dangerous men in America are broken down, piece by piece, until their minds begin to collapse. They call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. But inside these walls, reality is far worse than legend. Because one shocking event proved that even in the most secure prison in America, control can slip, and chaos can explode. And it all started with a pool of blood on a cold, gray floor. But how did we get here? What makes ADX Florence so extreme, so feared, and so impossible to escape? Let's go back to the beginning. The fortress in the mountains. Deep in the Colorado Rockies, surrounded by desert and snow, stands a fortress unlike any other. This is ADX Florence Supermax prison. Built in 1994, it was designed after one terrifying thought. What if even the worst prisons in America weren't strong enough? At Rikers, fights broke out daily. At Leavenworth, gangs ran the yards. Even Alcatraz had escapes. But ADX? ADX was built to be escape-proof. Every cell here is a concrete box. The doors are solid steel. The windows are so narrow you can't even see the horizon. Prisoners never touch another human being, not even the guards. For 23 hours a day they are trapped inside. The only freedom they get is 1 hour in a small outdoor cage, where they see the sun through a chain-link ceiling. It's a place designed not just to hold people, but to erase them. But the truth is, some prisoners don't go quietly. And one day, silence turned into screams. A ticking time bomb. Inside ADX are names that once dominated headlines. The Unabomber. The Boston Marathon bomber. Cartel leaders. Mob bosses. Every man here is dangerous. Every man is watched. But even with cameras, steel doors, and guards at every turn, there's one thing the prison can't control: the human mind. Isolation begins to eat away at prisoners. They bang their heads against the walls. They scream into the silence. Some cut their arms just to feel alive. And then came the day when 2 inmates snapped. A guard making his rounds spotted blood on the floor outside a cell. At first he thought it was self-harm, common in ADX. But when the cell door opened, he found a prisoner collapsed, stabbed with a sharpened piece of metal. The weapon had been hidden for weeks. The attack happened in seconds. And in a prison designed to be unbreakable, blood spilled onto the concrete. It was proof that even ADX Florence, the escape-proof fortress, wasn't escape-proof from violence. And this wouldn't be the last time. Shadows in the halls. After that attack, the guards doubled security. Cells were checked. Prisoners were searched. But the truth was clear. If one inmate could strike, others could too. ADX wasn't just a prison. It was a pressure cooker. The inmates began leaving hidden messages, scratched into the walls, whispered through vents. They formed invisible networks, even though they never saw each other face to face. Guards knew something was building. They just didn't know when it would explode. And then it happened. One morning, as breakfast trays were slid through the steel slots, a guard heard a scream echo down the corridor. Another fight. Another ambush. Blood sprayed across the walls as 2 men clashed with makeshift weapons. One man fought for his life. The other fought for control. And the whole prison was about to find out what happens when the strongest fortress in America starts to crack. Perfect white heavy checkmark. Let's keep the cycle going. I'll continue from chapter 4 onward, keeping the suspense and making sure every chapter ends on a shocking cliffhanger. The price of silence. After the bloody ambush, the prison went into lockdown. Doors slammed shut. Sirens wailed through the corridors. For hours, no one moved. Not the inmates. Not the guards. Just silence. But silence inside ADX Florence isn't peace, it's tension. Because every inmate knows one thing. Whoever controls the silence, controls the prison. Guards tried to find out who ordered the stabbing. But no one talked. Inmates stared at the floor, their lips sealed. Even the wounded man refused to say a word. And then one night the silence broke. A guard passing by saw something scrawled on the concrete wall in blood. It was a warning. And it meant only one thing. The violence wasn't over. It was just beginning. Prisoners without faces. ADX is designed so inmates rarely see each other. Meals come through slots. Recreation happens in isolation. But still, alliances form. Some men tap codes through pipes. Others shout through air vents, building connections in the shadows. From terrorists to gang leaders, invisible empires are run from behind those doors. The guards knew this, but there was little they could do. And one inmate, someone the staff thought was broken by isolation, was secretly becoming a leader. He had influence, he had loyalty, and he had a plan. One morning when the guards delivered breakfast, they opened a slot and found something chilling waiting for them. A hand-drawn map of the prison. Somebody, somehow, had studied the halls, the schedules, the guards. And now, the most secure prison in America had a blueprint floating inside its walls. When the lights go out, in ADX, power rarely fails. Electric fences, cameras, alarms. Everything runs on tight systems. But one stormy night, the lights flickered. For just 30 seconds, darkness swallowed the prison. And in those 30 seconds, chaos was born. Guards rushing down the hall found an inmate bleeding on the floor, his face slashed open. Another inmate had tried to kill him, right there in the dark. The message was clear. Even a few seconds of weakness was enough for blood to spill. And as lightning struck outside the walls, everyone inside ADX knew the truth. This prison wasn't unbreakable. It was a battlefield. The breaking point. The warden ordered harsher rules. No more recreation for weeks. No more books, no more radios. Just cells, food, and silence. But the more they tried to crush the inmates, the more dangerous they became. Whispers of revolt spread through the vents. Terrorists promised chaos. Gang members swore revenge. Then one morning, as guards moved a prisoner from his cell, he lunged forward with a weapon carved out of glass. The blade caught a guard across the face. Screams filled the corridor. And in that moment, the guards realized something terrifying. ADX wasn't just holding America's most dangerous men. It was creating new monsters inside its own walls. The weight of isolation. Life in ADX breaks men slowly. At first, they fight against the walls, against the silence. They scream, they smash their fists against the steel doors. But after months, sometimes years, the silence begins to eat them alive. Some whisper to themselves for hours. Some tear pages out of books and pin them to the wall like company. Others draw on the concrete floors with their own blood. One inmate, once a feared gang leader, stopped speaking altogether. Guards would slide his food through the slot, but he never touched it. Day after day, the trays piled up untouched. Until one morning, a guard opened the slot and found the man collapsed on the floor, barely breathing. Even inside the strongest prison in America, the real killer wasn't violence. It was silence. Codes in the concrete. The attack on the guard weeks earlier had put the entire prison on edge. Every hallway felt heavy, every sound suspicious. But ADX inmates always found a way to communicate. Tiny scratches appeared on the walls, hidden under layers of dust. Numbers, symbols, letters. It was a secret code. Messages passed cell to cell, unnoticed by most guards. At first it looked harmless. But then officers realized the symbols were forming patterns. Dates, times, names. And one night, a guard discovered the final message scratched into a cell wall. Tonight. Moments later, alarms erupted. A prisoner had tried to set fire to his cell using wires stripped from a light. Smoke filled the corridor. And the guards finally realized the codes weren't just harmless marks. They were blueprints for rebellion. Echoes of rage. To stop the spread of secret codes, the warden ordered new rules. Cells were stripped bare. Walls were scrubbed clean. Even pencils and paper were taken away. But instead of stopping the rage, it fueled it. Inmates began smashing their own heads against the walls. They screamed through the vents, their voices echoing through the prison like a storm. Guards tried to ignore it, but the noise never stopped. One night, a guard walking past heard the sound of water dripping. When he opened the slot, he froze. The prisoner inside had flooded his cell, ripping pipes from the wall, water rising to his knees. And as the guard called for backup, the inmate shouted one chilling phrase. "This place will drown us all." The blood on the yard. Even though ADX inmates live in near total isolation, they still get 1 hour a day outside. Not a yard like other prisons, but a small concrete pit, surrounded by fences with only a sliver of sky above. Most men walk in circles, their heads down. Some stare at the clouds, desperate for a glimpse of freedom. But one day the yard turned into a battlefield. 2 inmates, both with histories of violence, were scheduled at the same time by mistake. Separated by only a steel fence, they spotted each other. The shouting started first. Then came threats. And then one of them smashed his head against the fence until blood poured down his face, screaming for the other man's death. The guards rushed in, dragging him away. But as he disappeared down the corridor, his words echoed through the yard. This prison can't hold me forever. The monster within. The longer men stay inside ADX Florence, the more they change. Some lose their minds. Others sharpen their hatred. One inmate, once known as quiet and calm, began pacing his cell non-stop. Day after day, step after step, like a predator in a cage. Guards wrote it off as stress, until the day he exploded. When his food tray was delivered, he hurled it back through the slot, spraying scalding liquid at the officer's face. The guard screamed as other officers rushed in. And when they pulled the inmate away, he was smiling. His words chilled the entire block. Now you know how it feels to burn. Walls that whisper. ADX isn't just about steel and concrete. It's about breaking the human spirit. Some prisoners say the walls themselves whisper. At night, men claim to hear voices, screams from other cells or whispers that aren't there. Sleep becomes impossible. Paranoia grows. One inmate, a convicted bomber, refused to sleep at all. He scratched his arms raw, muttering that the walls were talking. Then one morning, guards found him sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth. On the wall behind him, written in blood, were 4 words. The silence is louder. The breaking point. By now, ADX Florence had lived up to its name, the most extreme prison in America. It had broken terrorists. It had broken gang leaders. It had broken men who once thought they were untouchable. But sometimes when you push too hard, something snaps. One of the prison's most feared inmates, a cartel assassin, had been quiet for months. Too quiet. Then, during a routine transfer, he attacked. With a weapon made from sharpened metal, he lunged at the nearest guard. The corridor erupted into chaos, shouts, alarms, blood. Officers wrestled him to the ground, but the message was clear. Even inside the strongest prison in America, violence lives in every shadow. And as he was dragged back to his cell, he spat out one final sentence. ADX can't bury the truth. The prison that breaks men. ADX Florence was built to be escape-proof, violence-proof, rebellion-proof. But the truth is far darker. This prison doesn't just cage men, it consumes them. It turns their minds against themselves. It makes silence louder than screams and walls heavier than chains. Some inmates break and never recover. Some lash out in violence. And others wait, plotting in the shadows. Because if history has shown us anything, it's that even in America's most extreme Supermax prison, control is only an illusion. If ADX Florence is the most secure prison in America, but even here the system cracks, what does that say about every other prison in the country?